Welcome to the Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Gil Robertson. Before we speak to our guest today, I want to let you know that the Foundation has set up a COVID relief fund in order to support thousands of union performers who are going through tough times. Since March, thanks to your donations, the Foundation has given over $1.6 million in emergency aid to more than 6,000 performers and their families. If you are a SAG-AFTRA member and need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Andra Day from United States versus Billie Holiday. Hi, Audra. I'm Gil Robertson, the president of the African American Film Critics Association.
Oh, wonderful. Well,
and
thank
it's
you.
absolutely amazing to meet you. I was thoroughly impressed with the performance. So I'm still mesmerized by it, literally. And I see a lot of movies. So
that's why I was like, that means a lot. That's real.
you did your thing, girl.
Thank you.
You really did.
I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you so much.
But now tell me, why Billie Holiday?
Well, it's interesting enough. First of all, I actually didn't want to do it. So the answer was really no. It was never for me that I was like, I want to play Billie Holiday someday and I want to be here. I think because I'm not an actress, I was very clear that I don't want to play Billie Holiday because the last thing I wanted to do was to somehow, be a stain on the legacy of my most, sort of potent inspiration and idol, really, musically and person-wise. But so it was definitely not one of those, I always wanted to play her. No, I was like, Lee, you should find somebody else. I really think I'll help you look. But but it was funny because he actually didn't want to meet with me either. He didn't want to work with me. And so we actually bonded over that. I think the first time that we met was sort of like, we didn't think we should be there. So we said, let's eat these hors d'oeuvres and be out, you know what I mean? So, but we connected and I saw he had a real love for her. And for me, that was really a spiritual piece of prayer. And then his real care for telling her story authentically was important for me because I do love her and I love her very much. She has completely colored who I am as an artist, my ability to own my voice and my sound, and my need to sort of say something with what it is that I'm singing and what I'm doing, and so I really, once I realized that the storyline would be vindicating her legacy and the world would be able to see her as the godmother of civil rights as she truly is, that for me was really, really compelling and exciting. I still tried to get them to look at other people, but ultimately, I guess it was supposed to happen.
But, she was a childhood prostitute. She was a drug addict. Mm-hmm. She was stalked all over the United States by the federal government. Yep. How did you go about preparing for someone who carried so much weight?
I think, well, first of all, Lee actually, to prepare me for the audition, he introduced me to Tasha Smith, who was my phenomenal acting coach and then also amazing actress and director. And then he also connected me to Tom Jones, who became my dialect coach. And, when I tell you, and I have such high praises for them, for Lee, for Susan Laurie Parks, for the cast, because they really poured into me. I think she really helped to teach me how to, as people, I think we take our emotions or we take traumatic events and we take things and then we compartmentalize them. Or as I say, I pray and I leave them in that space to heal and to move on. But I guess as an actor, which I feel weird calling myself because it's like, you did one movie, come on, calm down. But, as an actor, I think to hold on to all of that emotion, all of that trauma in my own personal life, and then to tie it to Billie Holiday's life, I think the through line is that we both are Black women, and that has its own inherent set of traumas and complexities and almost invisibility, and so much research, so much research. Every documentary, every book, which I had read Lady Sings the Blues and with Billie, Lady Sings the Blues. But I read another wonderful book with Billie, a book about her and her dog, even that relationship. So it was just a ton of research. I started smoking cigarettes. I have since quit. So that's not something I held on to. Drinking alcohol, which I don't do, cussing, which is something I really try not to do, and just not taking care of my voice and sort of being more damaging to a lot. Just whatever I could do to really transform into everything that I knew about her was a part of the process.
Wow, well, you certainly nailed it.
Thank you.
But the film is a late entry into this year's Oscar race, and many people have very high hopes that your performance is going to net you, at the very least, a nomination. As a relatively new actress, how are you dealing with the maddening world of award season virtually?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking that question, because that's one I have not actually been asked in this process. And in getting into the movie, it was one I didn't think about. It was, again, this movie was a huge faith walk for me. I'm a deeply spiritual person. I like to consider myself that. And so it was, to me, it was just every day was whatever that moment was. I just have to get through this and I have to be great in this moment. So I honestly kind of forgot about this side of things and I never really thought about it. So, it's been, it's been actually, so far it's been really wonderful. And I really will say, I think that has a lot to do with the film, with the filmmaker, with Lee Daniels, and with who Billie Holiday is. No one's really been they've asked really poignant questions or whatever, and, or just important questions and poignant questions, but no one's sort of been frivolous with the material, because I just feel like with her life and with this revelation and what we're going through as a nation right now, it's just too important. You know what I mean? And so it's fun because she was fun, but so I think that I will say I it's definitely new terrain for me, but it's been wonderful. Everybody's been really great. And what happens is whatever happens, I'm grateful for, definitely. As cliche as that sounds.
Right. I mean, what would you say is the essence of Billie Holiday? What is the central message of her life?
I think it is truth. I think it's truth. Not only do I think that's the central message in her life, I think it is the central message surrounding her too, because so much of her life, the truth of who she was intentionally, so this is not incidental, was intentionally shrouded in mystery or suppressed or completely done away with, or the narrative just completely altered. So I think truth, I think she was penalized and she was criminalized, as we often are as Black people, for being true to who we are and for living in our truth, especially, you're talking the 1940s, 30s, 40s, and 50s as a Black queer woman, and so it's like, for her to live her truth was utter defiance to everything that was going on at the time. And so I think truth is a huge central part of her life and a part of who we are. We need to see more of these stories actually uncapped and told truthfully,
Right. Now, Diana Ross played Billie Holiday to great acclaim in Lady Sings the Blues.
Yeah.
What type of pressure, or was there any, following in those footsteps?
It's so funny. I think people thought that there would be all of this pressure and all this, but honestly, I mean, the main pressure came from, I wanted to honor Billie Holiday, and as a through line, I wanted to honor, because I love Lady Sings the Blues. I love Diana's performance. But to me, it wasn't even a conversation, because I'm like, I'm not redoing Lady Sings the Blues. And if it were a remake of Lady Sings the Blues, I wouldn't have agreed to do it, And so that's a huge, for me, I'm like, why would we touch that? It's not only beautiful, the story was so pure. It was so just the way that she embodied her in such a beautiful way. And it also was, what we needed at the time as Black people in 1972, and what we could say, because Harry Anslinger was still in power, right? J. Edgar Hoover was still in power, was alive, and even Louis McKay, Billie Holiday's abusive husband, was not only in power, but was the technical director on the film. So the fact that they were able to do that was an amazing feat. But she, even, Evan Ross was on set as well too, because he's just a wonderful actor and an incredible talent. But he also wanted me to know, she supports you. So she was wonderfully supportive, and she's always been wonderfully supportive from the beginning of this process. And so, to be honest with you, it emboldened me to say, okay, if she did such an amazing job and she thinks I got this, then play more and experiment more. And so she was wonderful. There's no other way I can put it I didn't have that sense. I just had a sense of being fully supported and insulated and loved by her and, you know, sort of ancillary people and the cast. And so there was not that feeling. It was just a desire to honor her, to honor Billie Holiday, and then Diana Ross, and also Audra McDonald, who played her so beautifully on Broadway. So, but it wasn't, the pressure was just, I didn't want to be terrible. It didn't matter. You know, I was like, I gotta honor her in this, but I'm fortunate to say I was very well loved and insulated by her and by many others on this project.
The clothes, we've got to talk about the clothes. The fashion was fierce and you were wearing it, girl. You were wearing it.
Thank you.
How involved were you with the process?
I was very, very heavily involved. And again, I think that just has to do with how much I love Billie Holiday. I do consider myself kind of a lover of vintage and a lover of classic things. So I do have a pretty good knowledge of period and period fashion and culture and just, you know, cinema. So, and then Billie Holiday, being a huge fan of her. So it was, you know, easy for me to sort of kind of dictate like, okay, this was, you know, Tan magazine, that was 1953 when we shot that. That's where she would have an off the shoulder thing, you know, and or to talk about, for instance, that she wore cowl necks before they were popular in the 70s. Like she was sort of an innovator of fashion. And but Paolo Nieto, who was the costume designer on set, was just, I mean, when I tell you, listen, I'm a good old Capricorn, so I love a good work ethic. Okay. So, and Paolo was like, I mean, to the cufflink and I don't want to say extras, because I also don't like to call them that, as Lee says, but you know, sort of a smaller role cast like an extra, to a cufflink. If something was off with that, it was like, stop it. We need to get, so his attention to detail, his desire to not only honor Billie Holiday and the period, but to take her to another level, to take her sort of off the screen into this generation. It was amazing. So we actually had a very rich text history, and I would send him her favorite earrings, and she, you know, these shoes, because they wrote an article about a pair of shoes that she had, which were so innovative. You know, they sort of springolators with chains hanging off. No one had seen that at the time, you know, so, and he just was intuitive, and he also was humble and would listen to certain things. He just wanted to be great, and he was great as a result of it. And Prada just came in with these, I mean, the gowns, honey, the gowns, like, oh, they were so gorgeous. And, you know, he fit them perfectly to my body. And it was just, you know, every little detail. What would she have done? You know, what would be different? You know what I mean? What would we not expect her to do? And so, it was such a blessing working with him. He is an amazing costume designer.
I thought it was interesting that Lee framed, bookended the film with references to lynching, which, you know, I mean, Billie Holiday, in fact, you know, was a civil rights leader before that even jumped off.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about the role she played in inspiring that movement?
I mean, the song, my thoughts about it are, first of all, exactly what you said. And thank you so much for saying that, because that is really one of my goals. And I know one of Lee's goals for the film is, you know, first of all, changing the narrative about her life, you know, that we stop looking at her as a tragic drug addict, though she was drug addicted. She was trying to get clean, and the government would plant drugs on her and would, you know, they would say always, we'll give her enough rope to hang with, you know. And as we know, that happens, and it has happened and always happens. But the goal is for people to understand that this woman was fighting. She is an early civil rights leader, but not in the sense of she's supported by a civil rights movement. There was, at the time, there was no civil rights movement as we know it. It was her singing Strange Fruit and the death of Emmett Till that reinvigorated Thurgood Marshall, reinvigorated the movement. And so we owe her a huge debt of gratitude. You know, and to her own demise, she was actually really the first martyr in the war on drugs and in the war for civil rights. And so I think that, I mean, to me, it's vindicating for people to be able to finally see her as a civil rights leader and as a strong, broad-shouldered Black woman who was carrying this on her own, because, you know, there would be even little violation cards that the NAACP would write about. Oh, she did this in public, or she did this. And it's like, she's fighting to make the world aware that America is, as a practice, not a fringe group, but as a cultural practice, is lynching, a mob killing, which involves the police and the court system and, at the judicial system and the politicians, is sanctioning and supporting as a culture the lynching of Black people. And so she really let the world know what was going on. And I think, in order for us to actually see change, we have to actually know what's happening. And so she did that for us early on, and we owe her a huge debt of gratitude.
I'm going to come at the same question, but a little slightly different.
Okay.
The drugs, the songs, the men, the women,
yes,
and being stalked by the U.S. government,
yes,
the United States government.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want Billie Holiday to be remembered?
I want Billie Holiday to be remembered as a fighter, as a fighter, but as a victorious fighter. She's not, and Lee was so specific about not wanting to portray her as a victim, that almost she would come off too strong, and we had to kind of soften it up. But she was a fighter, she was absolutely a fighter, but she was also just as much a lover. And that's the thing, it's the truth, a fighter, a lover. What I love about her, and I'm so glad you brought it up, the men, the women, the drugs, but she allowed people to be who they were. And that's what actually struck me most about playing her. I knew a lot about her, but coming into it and really becoming familiar with and fusing myself with her magnetism. And I think a part of that was because she did back then what we should be doing now. She allowed people to be who they were, and was present with them as who they were in that moment, exactly as they showed up. And that is freedom, you know what I mean? So I think that I'd love her name to be synonymous with a fighter, a freedom fighter, and with truth and with love, and that she's a martyr, but she's not a victim.
Andra, fasten your seatbelts.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What a wonderful interview, by the way. God, it was so subtle and intuitive. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we will see you at the AFTRA Awards virtually.
Oh my gosh, I love you for that.
You'll be getting your people will be getting the letter.
Thank you so very much. Oh my goodness. And I'm glad you felt it, and it's for her legacy. So I really appreciate that.
It's literally the best performance I've seen. I mean, particularly when you factor in your newness in this craft.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're in 90% of it, and that you had to carry the movie. You carried the movie. And there were some fantastic performances this year. I mean, we have 90 members.
Wow.
But for what my vote and voice is worth, it's and I've seen everything. It's something I can't get out of my head.
Oh my gosh.
Just how everything she was up against, my God.
By herself. That's the thing about it. And I was like, and it's so funny too, because, people are like, well, how do you reconcile the drugs? And I'm like, well, first of all, it's about the fact that we're still criminalizing this, and we're not looking at this as an illness. You know what I mean? And
everybody's addicted to something. So
that's all what I say when people, how do you understand addiction? I'm like, we're all addicts. It just manifests differently in our lives. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm a Black woman in America now. And again, that's its own thing. But as a Black woman in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, so I think to myself, how the hell could she have gotten up there and sung Strange Fruit without some type of battery in her back? You know what I mean? And so some people are addicted to food. That would be me. Which was probably the hardest part of the film, was losing weight. I was like, I don't want to be skinny. I liked it how I was.
Right.
No. But it was just, you realize the fact that she fought through all of that, you know what I mean? And on top of losing her father to Jim Crow, she is, a force, and that's really the way I just look at her, and I love her. I love her so much.
Yeah. Best to you. We're watching.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Peace.
You have a wonderful day.
Yeah, I'll see you soon, definitely.
Oh, yeah, you will.
Bless you. Bye.